Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBinge It. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 9, Tatoo. This episode aired November 6th, 1995.
And surprisingly, the episode is not about the character from Fantasy Island.
No. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, Persistence of Vision, with the creepy hologram children?
No, it was perfect, but that episode left so many questions.
Like what?
Who are these aliens? How did they operate? Was it technology?
Yeah.
Is this their normal modus operandi?
I do think that's sort of the deal with the episodic television.
Yeah.
We don't explain a lot of stuff. We kind of trust you're a Star Trek person, you'll figure it out.
You'll fill in the headcanon.
Yeah, and we do that.
But I did enjoy the episode. It did have a very creepy feel. And I don't mean just the thing with Chakotay.
Yeah, that was definitely creepy. But otherwise, yeah, it was pretty good. Well, let's get something out in the open before we embark on this episode.
Yes.
We mentioned it back in the first episode of this podcast, but the producers of Voyager hired a consultant to help with the Native American background of Chakotay. The fact that Robert Beltran, who plays Chakotay, is not Native American, it was bad enough, but they kind of shift around throughout the series with what exactly his background is, right?
Yeah.
But at least when the show began, Native American was sort of the implication of this character's background. But the consultant they hired was a fraud.
Oh, yeah. A known fraud at the time they hired him.
Exactly. And somehow nobody checked. I mean, the guy had been outed as a fraud in the 80s in terms of not having any Native American background at all. He was actually from Eastern Europe.
Yeah, it was entirely fraudulent.
So this, unfortunately, puts a real cloud over a lot of Chakotay's character development.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they seem to have attempted to keep his specific ethnicity nebulous, which kind of makes it worse. If you want to make it a part of the story, that's great, but then you can't try to satisfy everything by just making it generic.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted to show how socially modern our views are by having a Native American on the show. Great, but then we're going to use him to represent all Indigenous people all around the world. And this type of homogenization of cultures and people is, I would describe it lazy at best and racist at worst.
It's a weird not wanting to commit to the bit.
That's exactly right.
Even down to the fact you couldn't find a Native American actor to play the role.
Right. And again, if you didn't want the character to be Native American, okay, but then lean into that. I don't know.
You know, if you wanted them to be Mayan, there are actors in South America.
Or lean into Robert Beltran's actual ethnicity, which they didn't do at all.
True.
But we aren't going to sit here and pretend like we're experts in this area either, because we're not, right? We're not really qualified to criticize the details. All we can do is react to the stories as they exist and point out that we could see in areas where they were taking some bad advice, right?
Yeah.
There are some blatant stereotypes that can't be missed, but other things we just don't know. On the one hand, it's great they wanted to add a Native American character and have him incorporate his culture into the story. But on the other hand, they didn't hire a Native American and they didn't get a qualified person to assist in the storytelling. So it's really a major screw up in Star Trek's history.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this before we get started because we've had multiple people contact us asking us to be more critical in this area. And I understand why you're saying that, but it would be disingenuous of us to be overly critical about something we know so little about. So, we acknowledge this is a problem, but we aren't going to pretend like we know any better.
Like a lot of things, I would encourage people to use the resources that are on the internet. I mean, genuine ones. Universities, professors, published works, people who've either studied or lived in the world who can actually write informatively on these kind of subjects. One book that springs to mind is the book Indian Stereotypes in TV and Science Fiction by Sierra S. Adair, which deals with the stereotyping of First Nation peoples in television science fiction. That could be a starting point or a jumping off point if people want to learn more.
It's easy to Google and find just endless resources, but that even terrifies me because I don't know which ones are real.
Yeah.
Like I took some stuff off of Wikipedia and then I thought, Wikipedia, right? What? You can't trust Wikipedia. So I thought, I don't know.
I think if you can find published peer-reviewed works by academics, published through universities, that's usually a better place to find it than looking at Wikipedia.
Agreed.
I mean, if you want to find something really obscure and technical, Wikipedia can often be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the problem is this guy that they hired to be the consultant, he had done some documentaries with PBS. So he was like used as an expert on PBS for a long time. And this is obviously pre-internet.
Yeah.
Still, there was, supposedly a source of truth, but not so much.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to say about that? Because there's a lot of this in this episode.
I don't know from a personal perspective because I've never had a problem with representation in television and media.
Right.
Unsurprisingly.
Yes.
I just hope that in modern television that that the casting and the production are able to address, we live in a world where diversity is a fact of life. And maybe television could represent that.
Yeah, I guess I would say two things.
Yeah.
One, modern Trek has definitely tried to be more diverse rather than pretending to be diverse by giving somebody maybe a name that implies that they have a certain background,
right?
But then they're actually just a white guy. So they've tried to be more diverse, and then they get a lot of criticism online from trolls, I would say, saying that they're too, I don't know, liberal or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, so even when they try to be more diverse, some of the trolls are going to come out, but that can't stop us because Star Trek is showing us a better future and it always has. So we should be going with the flow of the better future.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would say. And then the other thing that I would say is that frequently in television and movies, when a white actor replaces a character of color in a story, there's a big uproar. And on the other hand, or on the other side of that argument, are people saying, well, if you're going to get upset if a white person is playing a person of color, then why can I not be upset if a person of color is playing a white character? Well, I get what you're saying, but the problem is we're not starting from a point of equality.
Yeah.
And the same thing is always true whenever I'm arguing about the treatment of women. That's the problem, is that we're not starting from a point of equality. So you can't just automatically flip the arguments to either side. If there had been an equal opportunity for people of color to play so-called white roles, then you would be able to have that argument. But that's simply not true, no matter how much you try to say it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that we tried by introducing a Native American character. We just didn't execute it very well.
Yeah.
And let's hope that we're better at it now and more accepting of it.
Yeah. And to quote Data, I speak for everyone when I say, the haters.
Yeah. We're not here for the haters. I mean, the haters, I don't think they're listening to us anymore at this point. We could do a whole episode talking about this, and I'm sure getting other people involved in the conversation, but that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about this particular episode of Star Trek, so should we get started?
It's a piece of Star Trek history, so maybe we have to talk about it.
Right. Well, you don't have to, but we're going to. We did skip a couple on DS9.
Yes.
Well, we talked before about we accept the flaws of Star Trek, and it's just a part of it. But we don't have to say it's good when it isn't.
I don't think we've ever shied away from calling bad episodes bad.
No. And I don't think we ever will.
And if you haven't listened to our DS9 podcast, that's most of the Ferengi episodes from Kim's perspective.
Oh my God, yeah. Don't remind me of the Ferengi. Okay, let's get started.
Okay.
In the cold open, Chakotay and team are wandering around a rocky Southern California landscape.
Is it a rock quarry?
There are parts of Southern California that look like a scene out of the Flintstones, so I found this very relatable.
Oh, yes, there are.
We learn the crew is trying to mine polyferronite deposits, but B'Elanna informs the team that the deposits here are contaminated and can't be used. They have to give up, but this worries B'Elanna. She says our nacelles are going to burn themselves out if we don't find some soon.
When B'Elanna says contaminated, did you not just hear the little girl from Signs? It's contaminated.
I say that all the time. Like anytime one of our cats, Pinky, the picky one, if she won't eat something or she won't drink something, it's like, it's contaminated. So yes.
And Kim does it in the voice as well.
Yes. That was funny.
You know, that's another one of those random movie phrases that you just say.
I say it all the time, yeah. Mostly, though, the random movie phrases that I say are from Scrooged.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every one of them. That or Thor.
Well, there's the Elf. There's a few from Elf as well.
Well, but mostly only at Christmas. When I answer the phone, Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color?
Kim really does do that, by the way.
I am a pop culture victim. I can't help it. Tuvok calls Chakotay over to see evidence of other visitors to this moon. Chakotay is stunned to see a drawing in the sand of a sort of spiral with some lines through it. And we know he's stunned because of the music they play.
Yeah.
But we also have a flashback to a young Chakotay walking with his father and some other folks in a jungle somewhere. And the young Chakotay finds the same exact symbol carved into the trunk of a fallen tree. And his father tells him it's a blessing to the land for cutting down the tree, an ancient healing symbol, which he calls chamuzi.
Isn't that a type of, fermented beverage?
I'm confident all of the language in this episode is made up. So that's fine. We're just going to go with chamuzi. It's not as memorable as a kuchimoya, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
Chakotay's dad talks about descending from the ancient rubber tree people, and they are on this quest in search of a tribe that never left the jungle.
And now I'm hearing the rubber tree song.
I know, me too. The people in this tribe have chosen to remain here and not intermingle with the rest of the world. And then he says, we honor the sky spirits that led our ancestors to this sacred land. Young Chakotay, meanwhile, not impressed.
Not at all.
Like a typical teenager.
Yes, this kid actually does a pretty good job.
I don't think this actor is Native American. And the actor playing the father is Puerto Rican. So again, they're missing opportunities here. There are definitely some Native American actors who are smaller characters, but not the main ones.
Do you think the father's wardrobe choices just came straight from Indiana Jones?
Yeah, he definitely has the Indiana Jones hat, and maybe it's a little bit influenced by the one they made with Sean Connery and the two of them.
Nobody's interested in the Sean Connery Zardoz outfit.
No. Back in the future, Chakotay says maybe this symbol that they're looking at on the ground is a blessing to the land for damaging it with a campfire. Tuvok asks, where the hell did that idea come from? And Chakotay says, it's something he heard once. Back on Voyager, the pregnant Ensign Wildman is in sickbay complaining of back pain. The doctor basically tells her she's pregnant and might as well get used to being in pain and miserable.
Robert Picardo absolutely nails the portrayal of a doctor.
Kes tries to be nicer, but the doctor is really unpleasant. And what's wild to me here in the scene is that this patient is actually quite polite to the doctor, speaks directly to the doctor, and thanks him. Meanwhile, the doctor talks directly to Kes and is totally rude to the patient.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't complain about how people treat you when you're the one treating people badly.
Well, is this another example of an episode completely out of order? Was this a season 1 episode or script that got pushed into season 2? Because the way the Doctor's behaving, he seems out of character for everything that we've had up until this point.
Well, yeah, because there's even something in a few minutes that makes it seem like it is out of order.
Exactly.
But I don't know, because Janeway has the smaller bun in this episode.
Yeah.
That we've seen more in season 2 and we didn't really see in season 1.
Yeah, this is why I'm wondering whether it was a holdover script.
Yeah, could be. Well, meanwhile, Kes is very kind to Ensign Wildman and says she can call her anytime. After the ensign leaves, Kes asks the doctor why he has no compassion.
She seems kind of annoyed.
Oh, she's annoyed, yeah. But it's because he's a hologram Kes. We've been over this. The doctor says everyone in the crew is an adult and he won't coddle them. Kes thinks it would be nice if he understood what it was like to be sick or in pain, which apparently we've forgotten because the episode projections showed the doctor what it was like to have pain.
The doctor felt pain. He was bleeding.
Yeah.
Was this all just forgotten about?
Well, Kes may not have known about that, and I was wondering if maybe the doctor deleted it from his subroutines. I don't want to remember that. It was a painful time in my history.
I think this is just inconsistent writing. It's not good.
Yeah, it's definitely inconsistent. Well, Kes leaves annoyed. Elsewhere in Voyager, Chakotay is telling Janeway about this trip that his dad forced him to take to Central America. He says his dad was disappointed in his son's lack of enthusiasm for the trip.
He's not had a lot of experience with teenagers.
No. And then he shows her the drawing they found, and she asks how this could possibly match something that he saw back on Earth.
Yeah.
Chakotay says the official rubber tree people answer would be, it's because of the sky spirits, an ancient myth that says the sky spirits created the first rubber people in their own image and led them to a sacred land where they'd live for eternity. He's kind of laughing at this theory, but he doesn't have another answer.
Yeah. It's his father's creation mythology.
Right.
So, did that superhero, the bendy guy, the rubber guy, is that where he comes from?
The rubber people?
Yeah.
Could be. You're talking about Plastic Man, who should have been called Rubber Guy.
Yeah, rubber guy.
Janeway says B'Elanna picked up a warp signature headed away from the moon, and she asks Chakotay if they should follow it. He isn't sure they should chase after something just for him, but she says, we still haven't found the polypharonide we need to seal the warp coils, and maybe these people can help.
Well, because they're warp capable.
And then she says, we're in the business of exploring, and he agrees.
Oh, I really like that. That, again, is that Janeway thing of exploration's kind of our gig. Even though they're in these dire straits and they need this mineral to keep their warp capabilities going, she's still prepared to explore the universe. It's great Trek.
I don't think you could really ignore something like this. If you saw that symbol and it was something you had seen on Earth, you would have to explore it. But you also should ask yourself, did Chakotay draw it?
Why is that?
Well, because it's ridiculous to think this would happen. So you have to wonder, did Chakotay have a little break and a little mental break?
Oh, possessed by an alien. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now on the bridge, we arrive at the planet where the warp signature ended, but Harry is reading no life signs. Then they find something that might be a power source or an indication of cloaking technology, and Janeway says to transmit a message of peace on all frequencies. B'Elanna says this planet has a bunch of polypharonide beneath the surface, so she's all excited.
Yep.
Janeway tells Chakotay to get down there. She also says if they run into resistance, she has no interest in disturbing an alien race that wishes to remain hidden.
And Chakotay seems to voluntarily take Neelix. Didn't he remember last time that happened? Does Kes have another lung she can give up?
Yeah, I don't know why we're taking Neelix. Maybe they always take Neelix to look for food.
Yeah. Or, if there is a hostile species down there,
Yes.
the hope is that it will eat Neelix first, letting the others get away. So he could be useful as, like a bullet magnet.
Okay, some cannon fodder.
Precisely.
Well, off Chakotay, Tuvok, Neelix, and B'Elanna go to the transporter room, but they can't seem to lock onto a location to which to beam down. Every time they try, an electrical storm forms right above that location, so they quickly pivot to a shuttle instead. But as they're on the shuttle, a storm forms around the shuttle as they're landing, so likely either being caused by their technology, causing something in the atmosphere, or it's some kind of defense system.
Now, these aliens seem to be deliberately controlling the weather to block the transport. Does anyone else think they maybe should take the hint?
Yeah, I would question beaming down there or trying to get down there.
They don't respond.
They have cloaking technology,
And they are basically using the weather to block your transport.
Yeah, they don't want you there.
Yeah.
They don't want you there.
Yeah.
Chakotay has another flashback, remembering how much it rained in the jungle and also how hot it was and how many bugs there were. This kid was not enjoying his hike.
Yeah.
Chakotay's dad recognizes that he's miserable and apologizes for bringing him on the trip. Young Chakotay apologizes for not being what his father wants him to be. His dad says he's known he was a contrary since he was born upside down. This is where I ventured into Wikipedia about what a contrary is in Native American societies, but I don't know how accurate it is, but it talks about someone deliberately adopting behavior that is the opposite of the tribe.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly what being born upside down means.
Yeah.
So, but, well, I think this might be a bit of hyperbole from Chakotay's dad,
I think maybe what you're seeing here is that Chakotay's really developing his own personality. He's in his late teens, and he's striving for his own view of the world.
You can definitely look at it that way, that it's almost just a teen trying to find his way.
Right.
But Chakotay's dad, of course, sees it differently. He's concerned that without the sky spirits to lead him, that his son will lose his way in life. So he's still sort of looking at it from the point of view of the tribe.
Yeah.
Back to the future, and the shuttle does manage to land safely in the storm. Chakotay briefly sees the image of someone in the window of the shuttle, but he doesn't say anything about it in that moment. Up on Voyager, Kes activates the Doctor, who sneezes when he appears. And it seems that the Doctor has accepted Kes's challenge and programmed himself to have the symptoms of a 29-hour Lavoidian flu to gain the experience that she suggested.
He is a learning program.
He has holographic tissues, which he says don't offer to the patients, which was very funny.
That was great, yeah.
But he thinks this will be an education for the crew and help them to stop being so whiny, which is a very interesting take. Just then Harry enters and says he doesn't feel well, and the Doctor says, well, neither do I, but you don't hear me complaining. That was uncalled for.
He's a gem. See, this is throwback Doctor to season 1.
Yeah. Poor Harry, he wasn't complaining, he was just stating a fact.
Yeah.
But we never hear again what was wrong with Harry, so I guess he's okay.
And as it's Harry, it could be anything. He might have an alien tapeworm burrowing through his innards, or some kind of implant from an alien technology. They always pick on Harry.
Or displaced in time.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anything.
Trouble makes a beeline for Harry.
Down on the planet, we haven't made any progress searching for the power source. Chakotay says, well, I guess we have to look with our eyes and ears instead of sensors. Oy. On a planet.
Yeah, wander around aimlessly, maybe get a stick and poke the bushes or something.
Chakotay then finds a flower that he saw in the jungle all those years ago, and he's surprised to find it here. And now we discover that Neelix and Tuvok have something in common. Tuvok says he was a breeder of prize Vulcan orchids, which excites Neelix because he also breeds orchids, but for food.
He enjoys eating them, though. It is funny because the look on Tuvok's face when Neelix is like, oh, we have this in common.
Oh, we're friends now.
Tuvok is like, oh, great. I'm going to have to listen to this now.
B'Elanna is quite excited by the polypharonide reading she's getting with her giant instrument that she's carrying.
Yes. That looks like something out of 1950s sci-fi.
And then a very noisy hawk flies over, making Chakotay look up, and then flash back to his dad asking him if he hears what the hawk is saying. Clearly he does not. And the young Chakotay takes this moment to say he's leaving the tribe. He says he got to know a lot of Starfleet officers at the Cardassian border, and Captain Sulu has agreed to sponsor him at Starfleet Academy. Casual name drop there, but Captain Sulu. Really?
Yeah. I calculated he'd have to be around 94 years old. Somebody will probably correct me if I got that wrong, but if you assume Chakotay's in his mid-30s at this point, so let's say this event happened 20 years ago, that would still put the events of the original series 80 years before?
And do you really think that Captain Sulu was a captain for 80 years?
I'd hope he'd turn into an evil admiral at some point,
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe it was a different Sulu or an offspring.
Oh!
It's possible.
Sulu's daughter.
Oh, there you go. Well, his dad is annoyed, but Chakotay says their tribe lives in the past while other tribes have learned to accept the 24th century. His dad says he'll never belong in either world if he leaves the tribe, which seems like a cruel thing to say.
Wow.
Kind of like how the changeling woman would always say that to Odo.
Oh,
you don't
Odo.
belong anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw a real parallel with that. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the father here was really kind of terrible.
Yeah, that was
he
cruel.
says he allowed Chakotay to read about other societies.
Oh, I didn't include that for some reason, but yeah, you're right. He does say that.
So it sounds like the father is something of an isolationist.
Because he's not painted super negatively really until this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he says the thing about, I allowed you to read about other cultures. I'm sorry, what?
Right. Yeah. And then he says, because I believe ignorance is our greatest enemy. But it's like, oh, so you have to allow people to read and learn.
Yeah.
And you keep yourself isolated. It seems like you're the opposite of that. Keeping people ignorant and uninformed, they'll follow you forever then.
I wonder if they were not certain what to do with the father, because Chakotay is disillusioned with his father in his older age. So, maybe they didn't show that enough here of the why he was disillusioned, because we get this little flash of it, but that's all really that we see.
Okay. I saw this as a really clunky way of doing it. The father was very much a traditionalist, which can apply to any society, really. If he saw the world in these terms and his son would grow up and maybe become an elder within his tribe, live in that society, follow his path and do the same things that the father does. But the son is looking outwards. The son is becoming an explorer. He's interested in Starfleet. He wants to see the larger world. And this is the classic trope in stories of the offspring wanting to be more than what their parents were and see the bigger world.
Right.
Whereas the father has this traditionalist view, which may not be negative in this society, but in our world, it does tend to be somewhat restrictive.
Right.
But I think that was what they were trying to explore here. But again, another swing and a miss.
Yeah. We're a little clunky all along the way in this episode. That's part of the problem with this entire episode is it's just little snippets here and there. I mean, Chakotay says something about the tribe not accepting the 24th century, but even that, we don't really know what that means.
Yeah, what is meant by that?
Yeah, who knows? Well, at this point, young Chakotay wants his dad's approval to go into Starfleet, but just then they happen upon a structure in the jungle, and then that hawk above them cries out again. Back to the future, and Neelix reports that he found something. But just then, the hawk from above attacks him. The hawk also comes at Chakotay, and he protects his face. But while that's happening, Chakotay again sees the image of a man.
Yeah.
They do an emergency beam out of an injured Neelix, as Tuvok now finds a mysterious structure in the jungle. It's similar to the one in the flashback, but not quite the same.
Do you think the doctor's first question was, does he have lungs this time?
Probably.
So even the fauna don't like Neelix.
Back to sickbay, and a stuffed-up doctor has repaired the damage to Neelix's eye. The doctor's even crankier now as his symptoms have worsened.
He seems quite unwell. This is a very good simulation of a cold or flu.
Yes, but he says he's had this 29-hour flu for 20 hours, and he's still in command of all his faculties. On the bridge, they've made a plan to excavate the polypharonide, but they're hoping for permission from the aliens before they start. I think they've already told you no by trying to keep you off their planet.
Yeah, exactly. Are they just not getting the hint?
I don't know. Chakotay says it looks like the aliens left recently, maybe scared off by the shuttle or the crew. He asks if they've picked up any readings explaining the images he's been seeing, but the answer is no. B'Elanna says the structure they found is made from material they've never encountered before.
Yeah.
Chakotay says the people are here somewhere, but the tricorders aren't reading anything. So he tells everyone to drop their weapons to show their intentions.
I like how the security officer just really doesn't like having to give them up.
Yeah.
Tuvok is very uncomfortable with this.
Chakotay then, of course, flashes back to when the group in the jungle did the same thing. Chakotay's dad says the people they seek have reason to be scared because their history is filled with people who brought slavery, violence, and disease. Eventually, this works, and the people they seek do appear around them. Chakotay's father draws out the dude who seems to be the leader by drawing the symbol in the ground that we've seen before and saying Chamuzi, and then speaking in their language. He says, "We have the same ancestors." The guy grabs Chakotay's dad's hands and says, "We're identical hand twins." That was strange.
Yeah, that whole scene is pretty weird.
Yeah, I don't know what the hands thing was about. Back to the future again, and Chakotay tries the same tactic, raising his hands to show that he is unarmed. But then a windstorm kicks up, and they take off for the shuttle, avoiding falling trees. At one point, Chakotay does see an alien in the jungle, and he gets distracted enough that a tree hits him, and somehow his comm badge flies off.
Do you think these aliens are now going to be drawing the little symbols to apologize for knocking the trees down and all the other damage they did with the weather?
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to carve that into all the trees.
Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do after this.
B'Elanna and Tuvok call for an emergency beam out, and they're beamed out along with Chakotay's badge, but not Chakotay.
You'd think somebody could have noticed that during transport.
Yeah, right? Meanwhile, an unconscious Chakotay is seeing the image of that man again.
Yeah.
On Voyager, they're unsure what happened to Chakotay. Tom says there is no sign of the storm or of the shuttle.
Have they lost another one?
Yeah, definitely. Janeway says, "Get me a phaser, I'm going down there." The doctor calls at this inopportune moment, causing a minor Janeway eye roll, not one of the classics. The doctor, who is looking quite pale, says something terrible has happened. He says he specifically programmed a 29-hour flu, but it's been 30 hours. Janeway tries to put him off, but he says, "You can't leave me like this." And he's coughing and complaining a lot.
This is not going the way the doctor expected.
No, so Janeway's like, fine. But she says she needs Kes to come to the planet with her because Chakotay may be hurt.
Yeah.
And the doctor is clinging to Kes, who puts a towel on his head, just as Harry comes in to help.
A holographic towel.
Right. The doctor dramatically says his simulated virus is leading to his simulated death.
He is such a drama queen.
Yes, and Kes, who's very upbeat through this whole thing, says it's nothing to worry about. She says she added a few extra hours to the virus program. because knowing when it would end didn't make it a fair test.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have told him it'll be over in 45 minutes. She should have said a random amount of time.
This was laugh out loud funny because the Doctor seems so taken aback by this whole thing. It's really beyond his comprehension.
Yes. She leaves for her away mission while Harry is finding this all very funny, and the Doctor says, she's far more devious than I suspected, which is very funny.
Yeah. This is one of the things that's disappointing about Kes, that this was a character who is really starting to develop and become interesting.
Oh, I agree. I think Kes is a great character. Down on the planet, Chakotay comes to and realizes his comm badge is gone. He checks his tricorder and realizes the shuttle is also gone, thinking that means his crewmates managed to escape.
Yep.
He stumbles back to the alien structure and tries calling to the aliens again, but they still don't respond. And then he, inexplicably in this moment, starts to strip. He flashes back to when the tribe they encountered tries to change the clothes of the visiting group so that they're all dressed the same.
Yeah.
But the young Chakotay refuses. Meanwhile, one of the tribe draws on Chakotay's dad's forehead the same shape of Chakotay's current face tattoo.
Yep.
So we see the origins of that design.
Right.
Back to the future, and Chakotay is now fully naked, which is pretty shocking as we got a full butt shot in 1995. Although I guess maybe they thought nobody was watching UPN.
Yeah, it's a cable channel.
I accidentally paused right on the butt shot, by the way, while taking notes, and let me tell you, that is not what I wanted. Anyway, then he finds some clothes on a bench inside the structure, and he decides to put these clothes on, and somehow it magically fits.
Maybe they're self-fitting clothes. These are a technologically advanced race.
Up on Voyager, B'Elanna is angry that she still can't use the transporter due to storms forming whenever she tries to set a beam down location. And Janeway is like, why can we beam up, but not down? Tuvok says it's obvious that someone is controlling the environment to stop us from beaming down, but they're very happy to let us beam away.
Finally, Tuvok's the one who figures it out. Did they really take them 33 minutes to get to this point of, I don't think they want us here?
Yes, it did. Janeway says she'd like to respect their wishes, but she needs to rescue Chakotay first. I'm okay if we just leave him there. That's fine.
No loss. Tuvok can fill in as the first officer.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But no, Janeway says, screw this, we're going to put the whole ship at risk and land Voyager.
Yes, into the atmosphere.
This seemed absolutely wild, although I guess she figured the shuttle landed, so that means we can land the ship.
And if you lost the shuttle, I think it's easy to extrapolate that line and go, lose the ship.
Because as soon as we start to descend, a monsoon forms around Voyager.
Yeah.
Down on the planet, Chakotay finds a cave and makes his way around some lightning bolts that seem to be protecting the cave door. I wouldn't go in there.
Yeah.
And the ship is going down in a cyclone now, though I don't know how we can get out of black holes but not a cyclone, but that's fine.
Yeah, this thing doesn't scan very well.
No.
It's a little hokey, to put it mildly. And plus, Tom says the inertial dampeners are offline. The ship's still getting flung around, so all those people should be bouncing off the walls if it's caught in a storm like that.
Well, he does say that if they crash, they'll all be spots on the wall.
And this was one of my entire points in the Deep Space Nine, the ship, where the Jem'Hadar were just hanging from the ceiling and not stains on the wall.
Oh, geez. Well, everyone is throwing around ideas, but it's looking grim. B'Elanna is frantically trying to get more power to the engines. Meanwhile, Chakotay is wandering around in a dark cave when some aliens finally start speaking from the dark in the same language as the tribe from his flashbacks. Yeah. Chakotay says he's sorry, he doesn't know the ancient language of his people. A few aliens step out of the shadows and keep speaking in a language he doesn't understand. But Chakotay says, Chamuzi, like his dad said.
If you notice, all these guys are armed as well, apart from the lead guy.
Yes, I did notice that. He should have tried a Kuchi Moya. Those guys would have been, what? Finally, one of the aliens approaches, and it appears to be a white guy with some forehead ridges and the same forehead tattoo as Chakotay.
Yeah.
He also has white makeup on, so he's whiter than white. Voyager continues to fall.
Yep.
The alien puts a little device in Chakotay's hand that seems to act as a universal translator.
Yeah.
And then the alien asks him to explain his facial tattoo, and Chakotay says, I wear it to honor my father, and he wore it to honor his ancestors.
I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems obvious that he and his father's worldviews were very different.
Yeah.
And I like it as it's a symbol for him to perhaps connect to his father.
Yeah.
He didn't really seem to get along with or even share the same views.
Yeah. But he's kind of showing respect to him, I guess.
Yeah.
The alien asks if he's human and if there are others on his world with the same mark. Chakotay says not many, but some. The alien says, we were taught you had all been annihilated by those with no respect for life or land. The alien says about Chakotay that he claims to be a descendant of the inheritors, the ones our ancestors chose to honor. But he's surprised that Chakotay has no memory of this, because one of the gifts was the memory, but maybe that was lost over time.
Well, it's not very effective if they lose it over time, is it?
It's not a good memory. Well, we all forget things. The alien puts his hand on Chakotay's chest, causing him to have a sort of vision. Or maybe this is a memory that's being implanted.
Oh, that's a good take.
And the alien says, 45,000 years ago, our ancestors visited your world and met a small group of nomadic hunters. And here's where we see, by the way, the image of the guy that Chakotay kept seeing earlier.
Yeah.
The alien continues saying they had no spoken language or culture, only the use of fire and stone weapons. But they did have a respect for the land and other living creatures. He says, we decided to give them the inheritance, a genetic bonding, so they might thrive and protect the world. On subsequent visits, we found that the genetic gift... Sorry, people, but I recorded that like 15 times. I cannot say those two words together. The genetic
Yes, there was a lot of editing there.
Brought about a spirit of curiosity and adventure, impelling them to migrate to less cold climates. Their civilization had a profound influence on your species, but then new people came with weapons and disease. The inheritors who survived scattered to other societies. When we returned 12 generations ago, we found no sign of their existence.
Okay, we have to go into overanalysis here.
Well, first, they didn't look hard enough because Chakotay's dad found these people no problem.
Exactly. That is one of my points.
Yeah. Where did you look?
I don't know, several hundred years after these people last visited, Chakotay's dad found them living happily in the jungle. And they went back and they're like, I couldn't find any of them. Or their descendants.
Yeah, they didn't look very hard. You know what? They sent the lazy guy. He went to the one spot and he's like, there's nobody here.
Yeah, there's nobody here.
Yeah, I'm just going to
go and check the box that says, no, there weren't any.
I'm going to get myself a coffee and go back. We couldn't find him.
Oh, man, that's it. That's exactly it.
Oh, my God.
And there's more on this. 45,000 years ago, no language or culture. From my understanding, humans have had language for at least 150,000 years. And that's the conservative estimate. We've had culture equally as long, including burial rituals. Cave paintings date more than 45,000 years back, at minimum.
There's many things wrong with this story.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with it. And this plays into the mythology of ancient peoples that they had respect for the land and living creatures, and it was a golden age. Yeah. It's almost like the Garden of Eden kind of story. It's just a different version of the golden age myth. And I remember an anthropologist talking about this and saying that people forget ancient peoples were unfortunately both human and people and behaved as such.
Oh, sure.
This, I think, feeds into that, golden age narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, the timing is crazy. The fact that these white aliens instilled wisdom into these indigenous people is embarrassing. I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with this story. Well, let's see. Let's carry on. Chakotay says, my people called you the sky spirits, and he asks why they've been hiding from him while he's on this planet. The alien says he assumed they were a threat. Human conquerors often introduce themselves with messages of peace.
Well, apart from this guy seeming to be as closed-minded as Chakotay's dad, he had to ask Chakotay, are you human? So why did you think they were human if you had to ask Chakotay if he was human?
Yeah.
And if you have advanced technology and you were hiding from the Federation ship, didn't you detect that there were other races on the ship? Let's look at the people who beamed down onto the planet. A Talaxian, a Klingon, a Vulcan, and a human who has shared DNA with these creatures.
Right.
I'm thinking these people may have devolved in 45,000 years.
I was going to say they don't share DNA, but I guess they do. I mean, the myth is that they created them in their image, but what instead happened was he said they instilled a genetic bonding. So I guess that would mean they would have a link.
I have an overanalysis point on that.
Honestly, I think there's some good stuff in this story, but there's mostly bad stuff. Oh, no.
This has the bones for a really great story.
I agree, it does.
It's just...
Even with Chakotay and his dad, right? There are bones to a better story.
Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Voyager is about to crash. Janeway cries for B'Elanna to help, but she can't do anything, and she even slams her hand on the console. But suddenly, the storm clears and everything is fine.
Yeah, with like, how many seconds left?
Under 10, I think.
Yeah.
And once again, we almost died, and we're just going to pretend like that was no big deal. Tuvok says it seems the aliens have decided to make contact, and they've turned off their cloaking device. Janeway decides not to land Voyager after all, and they start scanning for Chakotay. She sits down in her chair and lets out a big sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Somebody should check on B'Elanna. She was pretty freaked out. As a Klingon, she may have thrown herself into the warp core or something to try to get more power. Hopefully she's okay.
Perhaps today is a good day to die.
Exactly. Down on the planet, the alien has given some polypharonite to Chakotay.
Which is nice.
Yes. But he doesn't want Voyager to mine their planet for more. Chakotay thanks him for the generous gift. The alien says you have a long journey ahead. It took us 2 generations to reach your world. They had to say that so that we knew that they couldn't help us get there any faster.
Yeah.
Chakotay says he wishes he could see his father's face right now, but he died fighting to save his colony. Chakotay says he wasn't on very good terms with his father when he died, so he returned to the colony to pick up the fight in his name and took the mark of their ancestors, which I guess is how he got into the Maquis.
Right. It sounds like he still didn't have a good relationship with his father.
No. Chakotay says he spoke to his father in his vision quests, but he never answered him until now. The alien then draws the Chamuzi on the ground. Tuvok, Kes, and B'Elanna rush in with phasers drawn, but Chakotay says to put them away. And then he hugs the alien, which makes Tuvok look at him like, what is going on here? It's very funny.
This appears to be another one of those emotional species.
Oh, yes. He'll be talking about that on his podcast.
Yeah. Found another species tragically driven by emotion.
Maybe the podcast is just him listing over emotional episodes of the crew. Today, Ensign Wildman cried.
It was unnecessary.
Well, that goes without saying. In fact, that's what it could be called. The whole podcast could be called Unnecessary, and then he's just listing emotional outbursts.
I think we have the name for Tuvok's podcast.
Oh, that's funny. The Hawk flies over, and Chakotay hears his dad's voice. Everyone beams away. Hopefully we picked up Chakotay's uniform before we left.
Yeah.
The end. Okay, what is left to overanalyze?
Okay, so these aliens are in balance with nature, and they respect the land and living things, etc. So instead of saying, get the hell out of here to Voyager, they're prepared to crash it when it enters the atmosphere and kill all of them, while patting themselves on the back about how evolved they are and how at one with nature.
We don't have evidence that they would have killed them, regardless of what happened with Chakotay. They may have just done that to scare them off. And they may have just done the same thing and let them go, right? But I take your point. It is incongruous with the rest of the story.
It seems like they were going to destroy the ship.
Yes. And they did attack Neelix's eye.
So I think they're just space hypocrites. I think they're just space holier than thou. Because that leads on to... So they go to these other planets, and which they'll obviously extract resources from or do whatever they were doing. And then they'll tag where they were camping. So they're also taggers.
Sure. Yeah, we don't know what they were on that other moon for. Rocks. They didn't have enough rocks in their jungle.
Well, maybe they go to other places and do their mining and their mineral extraction and do all the things that could have a negative environmental impact on their world, but they do it somewhere else, so it's somebody else's problem.
Oh, I see.
But they put their little tag on the world to say, sorry, not sorry. I have a very negative view of this race.
Yeah, not a big fan.
Because let's go to the next thing.
Okay.
They genetically modified humans to create this hybrid race. They literally interfered with normal evolution to create this race. And I assume they're just kind of crabby because the race that they chose didn't end up the dominant one on Earth. So basically, they're just upset that they failed in their manipulation of other species.
Yeah, maybe that tribe would have evolved naturally in a different way.
Yes,
if it hadn't been for this nonsense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the other question to ask these people is, okay, so how many other worlds have you messed around with and broken the Prime Directive?
Only...
I mean, I feel this is also almost a neo-colonialist attitude. They were coming to these noble savages and give them civilization.
I know.
If you do genetic colonization for good reasons, then you're virtuous.
Yeah. Were they stopping at every planet along the way, looking for people who respected the land? I don't know.
Yeah. So for people who were so in tune with the natural balance and things, then interfering with the natural evolution of a species, that's okay if it's fitting their agenda.
Well, sure.
Base hypocrites.
Because, okay, let's look at it that way. Here's a group of white people who've conquered a different people to make them more like them. And then they were unhappy when someone else came along and shot them up.
Colonialism much?
That's wild when you look at it from that perspective.
Next point. If you notice, there was that orchid that they found on their homeworld. So, and the hawk. So were they stealing fauna from other places to transport to their planet, or were they introducing invasive species onto Earth?
Yeah, they may have created a bunch of diseases.
These people really are the British Empire.
Oh my gosh.
And I think my final point, and you touched on this, they went back and couldn't find anyone.
They were right there.
Yes.
Chakotay tripped and found that tree.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that wraps up my overanalysis. I warned you I had a surprising number of overanalysis points.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty much talked about my points. It's just not a great look for Star Trek that a group of white aliens had to give the indigenous people a spirit of adventure and wisdom. Oy. And it's also stereotyping to assign some kind of special spirituality to all indigenous people everywhere. I mean, it's just so lazy. And this is sort of the problem that we talked about in the beginning. It's like when you're not going to be specific about a tribe, like an existing tribe or one that used to exist, and you instead try to make it generic and cover all indigenous people of all lands, it's like, come on.
It's like, pick one.
Yeah. Pick one and honor it and be respectful of it.
Exactly.
But this is disrespectful. That's why I call it lazy. Okay, let's go to women in the future. Not much to say. I did enjoy Kes showing the Doctor that he was being a jerk. I thought that was quite good.
Yes.
And then in Janeway's Leadership Corner, this idea to land Voyager was crazy. I don't understand it. And I don't really think...
It seemed a little reckless.
Yeah, it was reckless. I don't think that was a decision the captain would make in that moment. They've made Janeway very reckless in several moments, which doesn't make a ton of sense with how the show started. But that, to me, was absolutely crazy. The only other thing I would say is I hope B'Elanna is okay. Janeway needs to check on her because she's going to have some PTSD after this whole event.
I don't think Klingons suffer from that. I think that's one of the advantages that they have as
Yeah, but she's not full Klingon.
Only the human bit has that. The Klingon bit will be just be like, pull yourself together.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute solid thumbs down.
Oh.
I'm not sure if this episode is a play on the noble savage mythology or quite what.
Yeah.
It could have been a great exploration of Chakotay's strained relationship with his father and his father's values and beliefs. That was just completely missed. It could also be an interesting story dealing with aliens which visited Earth 45,000 years ago and influenced a particular culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one particular tribe.
Yes, exactly. The only bit that had any worth was kind of the Doctor, and it's almost a shame that that was the B story in such an F-list episode. So... thumbs down, don't really need to watch it again.
Yeah, I agree with most of the things you say. I'd probably give it a thumbs down too. I will say I expected to dislike it more.
Yeah.
Because I did like the connection of Chakotay and his dad. I liked that it didn't have sort of a cheesy resolution or a simple resolution, and that over time they never quite connected. And Chakotay felt guilty about that, and he went and changed his entire life after his dad died because of it. I thought that was, again, like we said earlier, that was those were bones for a better story.
Exactly.
I did like that. The biggest problem for me is that the overall episode is really impacted by the generalizations, which I don't respect.
Yeah.
The white people giving wisdom to the indigenous people felt pretty gross.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those types of things I didn't like. So I don't want to watch it again either, but I didn't think it was as terrible as you thought, because I did think some of those bones were okay.
I would agree that the bones were good. I think the episode was just abysmal.
Okay. This does not happen very frequently where you dislike something more than I do. I mean, it has happened, but it does not happen very frequently. Yeah. There are times where I like things more than you do, but not because you dislike them. Like, for example, the Klingon wedding ceremony. Nobody saw how much I was going to love that thing, even me. I was surprised.
I never would have predicted that.
Oh my God, I loved it so much. That episode wasn't great, but I loved that wedding ceremony.
It had a few good moments in it.
And don't make the mistake of thinking it's because I'm a woman and I like weddings. Baloney. I do not enjoy weddings in general.
Yes, in family history, I'm the one who enjoys the weddings.
Yeah, they're not for me. Our wedding was 11 minutes long. It was perfect. And if I had known about the Klingon wedding before we got married, it would have been a Klingon ceremony.
Totally.
Okay, I think we're done with this one, right? Close the book.
Wrap the book up. We can put the VHS in its case and bury it in the desert.
That wraps up season 2, episode 9. Come back next week for episode 10. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on the socials. We're on Instagram, Threads, that thing that used to be called Twitter, and YouTube at ReBingeIt. Or you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.